Awesome. Thanks, Molly. A little bit about myself, just so you know who I am. So I do own a marketing agency based in Houston right now. I do consulting, kind of interim director of marketing work across the nation for arts groups. My past desk job was the director of marketing for Houston Ballet for a few years. And prior to that, I was over at the Hobby Center with Theater Under the Stars for 6 or 7 years. So I love the arts. The arts are a passion of mine. I have the privilege of serving on the Dance Source Houston board, and just am passionate about the arts. I am not per se an artist, but my wife sang for Houston Grand Opera for 9 years, and I can somewhat sing, not as well as her. But it's my privilege today to have each of you on this call. There's only about 6 slides, and you can have this deck. Molly has it, and she can send it to you later, so don't feel like you have to take notes. And I use decks as kind of informational guides for myself. And also I'll talk much more than what's written in the deck. But I've titled this Catching Eyes and Getting Clicks because I think that's what most of you are interested in, and we can talk theory and strategy and how we actually do those things during our time together today. So let's see if I can do this. Here's slide 1. You know, the topic here was supposed to be, and is, I suppose, Facebook, Instagram advertisements. But as I heard someone say earlier this week, I think it was a meme floating around the internet. It said, you know, when your video plays before I can watch my video, it doesn't make me like your product. It makes me not like you. And we've all been there, right? You want to watch something, or you're trying to engage with a piece of content online, whether it's social media or otherwise, and someone's, comes up and they're trying to sell you a dog mat of some sort, right? And you're like, I don't have a dog. Why am I don't want to look at this. And so rather than focusing just on ads, let's talk about things that we can focus on and that can inform a strategy, whether it's being creative, being memorable, impactful, unique, interactive. These are some kind of buckets that I would say to keep in mind when you're creating ads, of course, yes, but also when you're posting. Keep these things in mind. When it comes to your strategy should be all of these things as it pertains to your brand. Rather than just this terrible ad within an ad within an ad that I've created for you to look at. Don't do that, and definitely don't run this listing in the paper type thing. The next thing I want to talk about is, where are your people? A small part of my company right now is building websites, and I had a very interesting interaction with someone just a couple of days ago. We were looking through his Google Analytics, which, if you don't know what that is, it's a free Google platform where you can see how people interact with your website. That's a very surface level description of it. And I don't know that I know any Google Analytic experts. I've messed around in it for about 10 years. It is incredibly powerful and incredibly deep in what you can do in it. It's like, if you ever run across someone who really knows how to use Excel and it like blows your mind of like, whoa, you can do all that in Excel. That's Google Analytics. But I had this conversation with a client. We were looking at his analytics, and he said, well, how many people are looking at my website on a desktop, a tablet, a phone? And lo and behold, 99% of his traffic was coming through on a phone. And the whole theory of building a website or building social ads in this case scenario, where you used to build a website and you would look at it on a desktop, you say, yeah, it looks great on desktop. And you look at it on mobile and say, oh, it looks okay on mobile. Maybe we should be thinking about this the other way around, right? And that's a huge shift in the industry that really 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago was not completely there. Everyone had mobile traffic coming to their site and people using tablets. But now most of the people that are looking at your Instagram, your Facebook, your website, whatever platforms you may be on, they're doing it on their phone. And they're very, people look at their Facebook profile and they're like, oh man, my profile thing looks great on a desktop. And it's like, yeah, but it looks terrible on your phone. And the phone is where you need to be paying attention to. That's not going to really ever flip back the other way. I think we're all smart enough to know that desktop is never going to outtake mobile at this point. So when you're creating an ad, when you're creating a website, make sure that you test how your ads look, how they function, if they function on a mobile device. And on tablets as well, but mobile device traffic is 3 and 4 times what tablets are, and then desktop is almost nothing at this point for this industry. So just keep that in mind. Next, have a strategy that fits your style. And this is something that you will, of course, have to adapt for your organization, which you know much better than I do. But this is something that I've seen work that is easy to remember and easy to implement. And this is, so I call it a 3-1-1. This is if you're posting 5 times a week, right? So you could adapt this to however often you want to post. And I want to go into a second how often you should post. But this strategy allows you to not be too pushy, right? People, the 3 ties to community, the 1 is a soft sell, and the 1 is a hard sell. Most of the time, people don't want to be sold stuff on social media. There's exceptions to it in certain industries. So where the bulk of what you should be doing is creating a community. Who am I? What am I? How can you get involved? And then sprinkle in soft sell, and then sprinkle in a hard sell. If you've got a performance coming up or something like, or a class or whatever it may be, don't forget to sell what you've got coming up. I've got a client that just last week kind of pulled me back and he said, hey, you've been doing a lot of great posting for us and the content looks great, but just remember what we actually are trying to do. He sells garages. So he said, we're trying to sell garages. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And maybe we haven't been pushing that hard enough. We've been doing too many creative photos and videos and whatnot that allude to that you can buy one of these garages, but are you being direct enough so that a new person to your brand or to your page, do they understand what you do? And all too often in the arts, people, oh, we do everything. No, you don't do everything. You do 1 or 2 things really well, and those are the things you should be known for. So don't let that get too far lost, that everything should tie back to some very base level. We're trying to sell this ticket. We're trying to fill this class. And then you can ask yourself, how do we go about doing that? It sounds simple, but as creatives, myself included, often we kind of drift over time, and then you look back, or someone could audit your social media pages and they would say, hey, I really don't get what you do. This is pretty, but you got lost somewhere in the message. And they shouldn't have to go back 2 months in your pages or spend 10 minutes on your website to try to figure out what you do. I've done consultations with no one on this call, but someone in the dance community in Houston. And we had a very long discussion. And at the end of it, I said, I don't know what you do. And she was like, well, what do you mean? She was too close to what she was talking about. And I was an outside consumer. I really didn't understand it. And after many, many minutes, I stopped her. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And so it was like, how do we re-level ourselves and do so across social media platforms? So have a strategy that fits your style. This is, again, an example. You don't have to follow this by any means, but that's if you're posting 5 times a week. On how often you should post, which is a great question and a question that's impossible to answer. I will give you a few tips. Number 1, post as often as you have good content, right? If you don't have good content, don't post. It sounds simple, but often people like force content, and from an end user perspective, you can feel that they're posting just because they feel like they need to post. Don't do that. Number 2, with the way things are going, I'm really talking about Facebook and Instagram here. Stories over posts, right? Stories over posts, meaning do stories way more often than you do posts. There are pluses and minuses to both, right? Stories last for 24 hours, posts last as long as you'd like them to last. There's a big industry move right now. I'm not going to go into this too much, but there's a big move in the industry right now on Instagram to delete things that don't perform well. There's not enough data out there to prove this right or wrong. This theory is that if you post something and you wait 4 hours and it didn't perform, to delete it. I'm not sure that I'm quite there yet. I'm not the expert in that area, but it's an interesting kind of thing that's going on. Post stories as often as you can, quite honestly. Stories are at the top of Facebook now. Stories are at the top of Instagram now. So prioritize stories. They need to be good. You can use simple design programs if you're not a designer, like Canva, or there's a lot of them out there. So make sure you have a strategy, make sure there's some consistency there. And I don't remember who asked the question because I can't see everyone, but the question about what if I don't post? So basically it's like similar to Google, that you get taken out, right? If you're not paying attention, if you're not managing your Google business page profile, the algorithm basically docks you for it, right? So if you have a business, like a brick and mortar business or even a virtual business, and you're not constantly updating your Google business profile, they will dock you for it. Their algorithm will dock you for it. So you should be uploading photos and doing posts and promotions. Those are all free things to do through a Google business profile. And so I would say you need to be posting, even if it's just, and you say, Christian, I don't have anything to post, or I don't have time to post. I understand both of those. Post once a week. post, find something to post once a week. The other side of posting with frequency, which is good, is if you want to start to create a personal brand or become an authority figure in a certain area, you have to talk about it all the time. You have to be out there. There's a good friend of mine that sells a skincare product. She built her entire business on social, and she posts stories, I bet 20 to 30 times a day. And she wasn't always big on social media. She's quantity of followers, and now she's huge. But it took consistency over probably a year and a half to 2 years before it really got traction. And you know this, if you want to see an example of this, go find a good realtor. Realtors are getting really, really good at this right now of selling the home, selling the properties that they've got, and acquiring new clients via social media. There's some great people in Houston that do it really well, that have built their entire business, real estate business, on social media. So, but it's really about creating the brand and then sticking to it. And it's the idea, I just read this earlier today, that it's hard to keep consistent when no one's clapping for you. And that's very, very true. But you gotta have it in your head and say, hey, I'm gonna post once a day or once a week or once an hour, whatever that may be, and then force yourself to do it. And it's difficult, especially if you're a team of one. I've been there, it's hard, but make sure that that's out there. So that's all I'm going to say about the 3-1-1 strategy. Adapt it, but do have a strategy that fits your style, that fits your brand and your audience. Keep them in mind. Next, and I want to make sure we have time for questions, so I'm going to go through this quick. Track, measure, change. Great thing about digital is you know whether it's working or not real fast. I tell almost all my clients, they say, hey, are we spending enough, or is this working or whatnot? I say, give me 2 weeks. Give me 2 weeks, and I can come back to you and say exactly what needs to be changed, whether it's creative or copy or budget, whatever, or ad style. Give me 2 weeks, and then I can tell you exactly how things have gone. This is just, I'm not using any like fancy agency, high dollar platform. I've used them in the past to measure effectiveness, and they're out there. And if you want to spend a lot of money on them, go for it. But I believe you can get most of what you need through the platform's insights, ad builder, and all those things, Facebook business, analytics. All of those things are baked into these things now. So use them. I can't talk through, I don't have time to talk through exactly every piece of them. I'm happy to do so on a different call, offline, to talk about some of the things you should be looking for. But I want to go through these one, two, three. They're questions that you can ask yourself. Did my ad campaign perform as expected? What did you think was going to happen before you launched the campaign? Say I represent a dance studio in Houston, and they come to me and they say, hey, I want to run ads. And I say, that's great. Let's do it. Let's get some good copy, creative together. But what do you expect to happen? Like, are you starting a class, an adult tap class? And if so, do you want 5 people? You want 15 people? Let's put some of those goals out there in our heads and out there on pen and paper to say, this is what we're expecting to happen, and just measure it. Did those clicks convert into bodies in the dance studio in that case? Number 2, and this is extremely important, I'm gonna give you an example on it. Were my conversion metrics accurate to the success of my campaign? I represent a few schools in town, but one of them is a large private high school that all of you would know about if I said their name. And recently they had an open house, an in-person open house, and we ran a big social media campaign, and they wanted to focus on creating messages on Facebook. So their campaign metric was not, in this case, was not how many people showed up to the open house. Their measurable was how many conversations can we start on Facebook inside Messenger, right? And that's pretty difficult to do through an ad. And so lo and behold, we did all this, our open house went great. And just yesterday I was talking to the director of marketing, and I said, we only got, I think it was like 7. We only got 7 conversations going through this ad. And she said, yeah, but it started tens of more through phone calls and whatnot. So just make sure that your conversion metric is kept, let me say kept thoughtful, because your metric could be website visits, your metric could be phone calls, click to call ads, messages. There's a ton of them out there, and you can look at all of them. Make sure that whatever that metric is matches how you're going to measure success, right? Just make sure those 2 things are married. And then 3, and lastly, what would I do different in my next campaign? I said digital is great because you know whether it's working or not. So then the next question has to be, if it didn't work, or even if it did work, what could we do better next time? Do we need to be working on a video? Do we need to be making better photo content? Whatever it may be, how can we improve upon this, knowing the response that we got in that ad? So those are three questions. They seem almost shallow, but I think if you really dig into them as you run ads, or even you could apply them to posts as well. I posted this video and it cost me $1,000 to make this video. What did I get out of it? And is this something we should be doing again or going forward? And so just track, measure, change over and over and over again. Your campaigns can always get stronger. They can always be better. But if you're not measuring them and you don't have the right conversion metrics kind of in your head and set up online, it's going to be difficult. Sophia, I just saw your chat. I apologize if that came through a few minutes ago and I did not see it. Reels are great. If you can create good reels, and if you have the time, reels are a little bit more time intensive than, let me say, good reels are a little bit more time intensive to create. Yes. The other thing, the next kind of layer on the cake, especially right now, is live, right? And so if you're on Instagram and one of your friends, or if you're like me and I run way too many accounts, if someone goes live, what does it do? It comes down as a notification at the top of your thing. There is no other feature or notification aspect in Instagram right now that pushes down as a notification inside the app than live. And obviously plan your lives, make sure that they're thoughtful. Sorry, I was reading another chat. Make sure that they're thoughtful, but and I'm not saying go live all the time. Go live when there's something exciting going on, and know that your live takes time to grow. I have a client that wants to go live. He's a home builder, and he's like, Christian, let's go live. And he's like, well, no one watched it. And I said, well, his name's Al. I said, Al, you were only live for 30 seconds. Like, you got to be live a little bit longer than that. So you got to give it time, but know that, and we could do a whole symposium on what to do, what not to do going live, but that is a big push. Well, I don't know that it will always be true that that's the way Instagram treats accounts going live, but right now it's a huge priority. And keep in touch with Instagram. Changes very, very often, whether you realize it or not. And Facebook too does as well, but really Instagram morphs. And anytime that new bubble comes up at the top in your stories, click on it and watch what changed, or you can read about it online. But pay attention to what they're changing and how they're prioritizing content, because that can definitely drive what you should be doing going forward. So I know that was a lot. My last slide, this is obviously not me and not my grandma, but I'm here for you. That's my email. And Molly and I were talking just previous to this. I've had the privilege of doing this a few times to different groups. And I was telling her from the last one, I still talk to some of those people, and they text me and they call me and say, hey, Christian, can you look at this? I'm not charging anyone anything. I'm doing this all for free. If you ever have an issue, or if you want some advice or some review, email me. I'm here for you. I'd love to help in any way I can. I want all of you to succeed and all this to be clear. Or if you should want to continue this conversation, let me know. I'm happy to do that. But I know we only have 4 minutes, so I apologize for talking too long. But I know we wanted to open it up to some Q&A. So Molly, I'll be quiet.